My name is Jovan. I go by Jovan Janelle on Instagram and through my tattoos. Janelle's my middle name. I tattoo in Brooklyn, New York. I've been tattooing, I'm going on 3 years now. Um, and I specialize in like fine line, realism, micro realism. I like botanical work. I like fine art references. I like throwing a little bit of abstraction in there, sometimes a little bit of surrealism just to give it a little bit of an edge. And that's what I do.
Got it. So how did you get into tattooing?
So that's been a journey as well. My first degree out of high school is I have a bachelor in fine arts, and during high school, the goal was to become a tattoo artist. Um, at that time, as you mentioned, the industry was a little more skewed towards men. And I'll also take credit. Probably my portfolio wasn't up to par. There's probably many reasons, but I did shop around. I did ask, different tattoo shops. I just wasn't able to get an apprenticeship. I was 18. I'm 35 now. So once I graduated from art school, I didn't go into the arts directly. I started bartending, which a lot of artists tend to do when they don't go directly into their career. And I did that for several years. And then eventually I realized like I needed to move out of bartending and find a stable career. Led me to nursing. I went to nursing school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And that was just a wonderful experience. But at the same time, we were going through the COVID-19 pandemic. So I was in school and clinicals and all that during COVID-19. And I think like a lot of people, it just rattled me and it had me looking at like my life choices, like where do I want to be? What do I want to do? What's going to bring me the most joy and fulfillment in life? And like, not for nothing, like nurses, they're frontline heroes too, and I didn't know if that was my calling. Like I respect the job, it wasn't for me. And the month that I graduated from nursing school, my partner and we got matching tattoos. And I just asked the person that was tattooing us if they'd be willing to have like a shop hand or an apprentice on board. They said yes. Literally, like the next week, I came in and I started my apprenticeship, and I've not looked back.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's an interesting journey into becoming an artist. But definitely, yeah, going into nursing during COVID was probably a very interesting experience. I know a lot of nurses, and that seemed like a very stressful time for them. Um,
Absolutely, absolutely.
yeah. So growing up, then, were you always into drawing, art, that kind of stuff?
Yes, yeah. From when I was a little kid, my mother always really encouraged it. Like she painted my walls white so I could just draw on them, so she could paint right over them.
That's
As a
awesome.
kid, I wasn't like as much of a TV kid as I was a kid that was just like playing with her crayons and her markers and her paint set. Um, and that lasted throughout junior high school into college. While I was bartending, it kind of took a little bit of a back seat, but got back into it. You know.
Okay, got it. Cool, and that's that's awesome that you actually like followed your passion in the end and are doing. I'm assuming you love it now.
Oh my god, I love it, and I really do believe like it was like a destined fate, like because it was always on my mind. I tried, and even I would say like 6 months prior to graduating nursing school, I remember even saying to my cohort and my classmates, like, I'm not going to do this. Maybe I'll just attempt tattooing again. And it was like almost like it rolled off the tongue. It was almost a joke, but I feel like I manifested it into existence, because
Yeah,
like 6 months later, there I was tattooing. I was like, wow, so I definitely think this was like a divine path for me to go on.
that's super cool. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, definitely. I huge believer in you can manifest your destiny in your future. So cool. What was your apprenticeship like?
Um, it wasn't the most ideal.
Okay.
Um, it was a very hands off apprenticeship.
Hmm.
And it was, I really do feel like YouTube helped me learn a lot of what I needed to learn. And then eventually, another artist did come into the shop because at first it was just me and my supposed mentor in the shop, just one, two people in the studio. And eventually, maybe like 8 months into my apprenticeship, we hired someone else on, and having that other set of like eyes, ears, feedback was really helpful. But I was really alone in my apprenticeship for a long time.
Okay, that's not the ideal way to learn.
No, no, it's not. And maybe in hindsight, I probably should have left the apprenticeship sooner because of the conditions. But there was always, excuse me, but there was that fear of like, it took me so long to get here. I got shot down so much in the past. Like, if I leave, am I messing up the flow of things? Like, and I just kind of stayed the course until I couldn't anymore, and I ultimately left.
Okay, got it. So you brought up something interesting that I think has been pretty cool for, over the last 10 years. If somebody's interested in getting into tattooing, it's not like it was 20 years ago where you could only learn from a person. Now there's YouTube, there's so many training videos out there, and a lot of them are free. What was your experience like working with kind of learning from YouTube and uh, going down that path?
I don't think anything can replace a good mentor. So like
Mhm.
since I've left my apprenticeship, like I've seen apprentices get mentored, and I don't think anything can really replace that as a paradigm in itself.
Mhm.
But I would love to see like tattooing being like also seen as a trade, and like having like more formal avenues for like education and artistry and health and hygiene practices. And even in some trades they have like two routes. They have like more formal school education where you like pay for it, or you go like the apprenticeship route in some trades as well. And you can have both leading you to your licensure. Um, I would love to see that as an alternative, and more regulation. So like what happened with me doesn't happen,
Yeah.
or isn't okay. I think that I I got through it, and I work now in a place where everyone is super super talented, super helpful, super supportive, and they just like pour knowledge into you, and it's wonderful, and I'm blessed to have that experience. Um, but because didn't have that feedback early on, I'm always questioning what I'm doing.
Mhm.
Like, am I doing this right? Am I doing like, is this line good enough? Is this saturated enough? And constantly having to like revisit like fundamentals, um, because I want to make sure I'm doing it the right way. It was a lot of like, trial and error, and like I hate to say it, self teaching, and it shouldn't have been that way.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, and I 100% agree. Like I do jujitsu and I watch a ton of YouTube videos, but there's a big difference in watching on how a move is done and then doing it in practice in the gym. So yeah, you can learn a lot of cool stuff, but yeah, nothing replaces that in person mentor, somebody helping you, showing you the finer points of what you're doing. Um,
Absolutely.
but there's definitely a good. You can get some good stuff off YouTube, like you
You
said. But
can. You
yeah.
can. Absolutely. But the thing with in the beginning was like, I didn't know what was the good stuff and what was the bad stuff.
Mhm.
Like, how do I discern which is a really helpful, resourceful YouTuber or a course or program versus someone who's maybe not giving the best advice. So I
There's a
think
lot of those
having
out there
both,
too.
yeah, exactly. So, having a little bit of both, I think, is just like, I wouldn't say anyone should do it on their own. Even if it's not a formal apprenticeship, have someone in that you can like tap into and like, you know, ask if like what you're learning is accurate, or give advice, and someone who has experience, I think, is important.
It would be nice if there was a more formal standardized way for someone to become an apprentice and go through that. Because again, you look at almost any other industry. Like I was in the carpenters union. I was an electrician for years. I worked construction for 15 years before I got into marketing and stuff. But there, you're working, you're going to school, you're being taught by somebody. It's a very like, this is how we do stuff. These are the standards versus, tattooing. You can get a machine off of Amazon and then you're a tattoo artist. And also with regulations being at a state level, not a federal level, like you go to Colorado, you don't even need bloodborne there.
Okay.
You can literally do anything. It's
Yeah.
nuts. But that's, eventually going to lead to something bad happening. So I
Right.
think,
And, at the
yeah.
end of the day, like, we are breaking people's skin open. We're
Hmm.
dealing with all these like bodily fluids. And on top of that, we're adorning someone with something that they're going to hold on their body forever. Like, and that has to have a certain level of respect and honor, you know?
Mhm. Agreed. Agreed. How did you find the shop that you're in now?
They are a local shop to my neighborhood.
Okay.
The one of the owners, so it's owned by a husband and wife. They both do
Mm.
tattoos, um, and the wife briefly worked. Well, I served her drinks at one of the bars I worked at many
Uh,
moons ago. But then she eventually worked very briefly. I think it was like 1 or 2 days at the shop that I came from.
mm.
And when I found out that she opened a shop in the neighborhood, shortly after I left the other shop, I was like, I have some clients I need to, you know, do and like, I need to give them a place where I can work on them. Um, would it be okay if I just came and used your space? And eventually it just led into me working here, and it's been great.
Okay, got it. That's pretty cool. That it's amazing the connections you make. Like you don't think anything about it, and then something pops out of them. Um, I will say there's a lot of like tattoo artists I know that have become successful or something. Just like a lot of it is from that, like making connections and talking to people that and they don't expect anything out of it, and then all of a sudden years later it turns into something, and it's um, one of those things I wish more artists would, I guess, take seriously. Like, and even switching that over to like the client side, like there was a artist that I was talking to. He's like, hey, even if someone comes to me, he only does black and gray realism, but he's like, hey, even if somebody comes to me with color and I don't want it, I still talk to them. I still give them a recommendation of the artist. I still, treat them with respect and kindness. And guess how many of those people a year, 2, 3 years later come back when they're ready for a black and gray thing? Like, um, just taking the time to talk to people and actually be kind, and you never know what kind of connections you're going to make.
100%. And I feel like
Mhm.
the client experience is so important. Um, we're not, an illegitimate profession anymore. We're not doing them in
Mhm.
basements, like we have, and like the standard is so much higher than what it was, like, I think 20 years ago. You
Mhm.
know, the people who are getting tattooed are so much more diversified
Mhm.
now than they were 20 years ago. And, like any other industry, I feel like there needs to be a high level of professionalism, you know? And I think that it not only makes the experience better for the clients, but it elevates our own industry as well. Yeah.
And that's a good point. There's doctors, lawyers, almost everybody has tattoos now, and uh, so with that does come that certain level of like a doctor or somebody that has a good amount of money, a good career, doesn't walk into like a dirty street shop and just get treated like shit and like they'll never come back. It's the client experience. Like so many people have gotten into the industry, so many amazing artists, that really what seems to be the biggest dividing factor between success and not success at this point is the client experience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah. And it's I think not talked about enough. Everybody says do better tattoos, which of course the art is a very big part of it. But uh, I've said this a ton of times on my podcast and in my videos. Like I've been going to the same artist for 10 years. He's done 70% of my tattoos. He's a good dude. Everybody loves him. Like we just chat the whole time. Like we both like motorcycles. He's super laid back, owns this beautiful shop here in Wenatchee. And it's all about the experience. I, along with, probably anybody who has any tattoos, has had the experience of going in, the artist doesn't talk to you get it done, and you just leave, and you're like, that was the most awkward like 3 hours of my life.
Absolutely.
Never coming back here.
And you hear it all the time right now that the industry is oversaturated. And that may or may not be true. I know there's a lot more tattoo artists now than there was, even 5 years ago pre-COVID, right? Like there's like COVID surge after
Mm.
people, new tattooers coming in. But I live in New York City. You know, there are amazing artists everywhere.
Mm.
On every corner, there's an amazing artist. There's some not so good ones either, but for the most part, like if you want a really awesome tattoo, you can find it in New York.
Mm.
What separates, people from going from one to the other, and I really do believe it's like, the kindness and the courtesy and the professionalism that you bring to the table, like human to human, you know?
100%. 100%. I uh, had an apprentice on here, first apprentice we've ever had on the show, but probably 2 months ago, and she's in Vegas, like kind of like where you're at, super competitive. There's a tattoo parlor on literally every every two buildings. But she's booked out for months, and she's just the sweetest, nicest young lady that you'd ever meet. And you're like, and I mean, she does great work too. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But yeah, her personality was phenomenal. Um, and that just goes so much further than I think people really give it credit for. And I mean, we all know tattoo artists that are phenomenal that are booked out a couple weeks, and we know ones that are, I mean, good, but not to that level, and they're booked out months, and it's 100% a relationship business. I mean, if you had, you know, you needed a plumber to come in and fix something, and you have three different people come in, one super friendly and two are off-putting, like even if the guy that was friendly costs a little bit more, you're 100% going to go with him. It's just how it
Absolutely.
works. Yeah.
Agreed. Absolutely. Like,
So
and
as
I think, sorry.
no, sorry, go ahead.
And I think like, so I'm also in Ryan Roy's the Artful Dollar class, and there's
Mm-hmm.
like a marketing component, and like a lot of like the foundation of what he teaches is like you are also building trust. You're not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily always selling. Like you have to put deposits into your bank before you withdraw your sales pitch. You know, like you have to build trust. And I think that like going back to what you said with the plumber, like that kindness, it builds trust, and that's what people want to see. They want to see someone that they relate to, someone that doesn't look like they're going to screw them over, that looks like they can be relatable, and it's important.
Yep. Yep. People judge you off of how you treat them. So, you know, putting a little bit of time and effort into that is huge. Um, Kind of speaking about that, like what do you do? I mean, what have you seen to be most helpful when trying to build a good client experience?
So I think that listening is a really important factor. You know, people come to me and they have their ideas. Like for most of us as tattoo artists, this is our job. We hear ideas every day. But for these people coming in, this is a monumental event. It might be have a significant meaning behind the tattoo. It might be a memorial tattoo. It may be something they've been thinking about for like the last 5 years, and finally now they're in a position that they can do it. Like these are like big moments for people, and like to really listen to them and hear their ideas, ask the right questions, and hear their feedback is a super important part of like the consultation process. Um, and I think after having like a really thorough consultation, um, providing like I use booking software. I find that to be like the easiest for not only me but for my clients, you know, so they can take a look at my schedule and find a day that works for them. I think that's really important. And then during the tattoo, you know, making sure that they're comfortable, continually checking in. Hey, how you doing? You all right? You need some water? Um, would you like to take a break? Are you hot? Are you cold? Um, Making sure that they have a pillow if they're laying down, if they like to talk, engaging in conversation. If they don't like to talk, respecting that as well. And just kind of curating the experience to their needs, and doing it like with a smile. A smile really goes a long way. Um,
Yes.
yeah. And and then afterwards, I always like to send um, follow up pictures like that I take from our session. I like to give them like the pictures that I've like sorted through that are good that I'm going to post to Instagram. They got a copy of it. It also gives me a chance to check in with them. How's your tattoo healing? You know, I think that's a great extension that tattoo artists can do. And sending the tattoo photos is a good way to do that without being like, you know, random or, you know.
Mhm.
Um, I also like sending out, giving people little aftercare kits and goodie bags.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't, not a lot of tattoo artists do it. Some do, but I find that's like a really nice finishing touch. I give aftercare ointment, really thorough instructions, some stickers, a 10% off card for a friend, and
I like that.
yeah, and it comes in a
That's
little thank
smart.
you bag with a little bow. It's adorable, and I just think that and people are like smiling when they get it, and I think that's just like a nice touch as well.
That is an amazing touch. That is, I don't think I've ever been given an aftercare product, and I've got a couple tattoos. But I love that. That is one of just those, and it doesn't cost that much money, I would guess, to put one together, and the
Each
building
bag
that
maybe
relationship.
cost me $3 to put together. You know, when I
Yeah,
buy everything in bulk, $3 to $5.
yeah.
I don't know the exact math, but it's nothing compared to like, you know, what we're doing. And It's, I think, a
Yeah.
good investment in our clients. So,
100% building that relationship. Again, they're going to come back more often. I guarantee you it's paid off in way more than $3 to $5 for handing that out. I love that. That's a great idea. And also sending the text messages with the photos. It's amazing how many tiny little things, or even just offering them water or coffee or something like that, or a small bag of chips, is like, to go above and beyond is not very hard. It does not cost a lot of money. It is very, like, the bar is not super high. So just doing these small little things that take you a tiny little extra bit of time. I mean, if you compound that over the 20, 30 years you tattoo, that would make a huge difference for the like most minimal, not minimal amount of effort, but a very small amount of effort that would pay off so much. I love that.
absolutely.
I love that. Like sending the pictures too. That's a good idea. I don't think I know anybody that does that, but that's a good way to check up on a client. Send them something that they will love, because, like you said, it's people, like, for you it's another day in the office. For them, it's this experience that they're going to have this tattoo the rest of their life. It could be a memorial. It has some kind of meaning to somebody normally, unless you're doing like a flash event or something like that. People have been thinking about these for a while, hopefully, or you might get a cover up, but taking that little extra time to actually talk to them about it and get their idea is a game changer. Versus a lot of artists are like, okay, just here's what I drew up, sit in the chair, let's do it.
Right.
Doesn't
Absolutely.
build a,
Oh,
yeah.
and another thing, I am of the opinion that before my client walks in, my station is completely prepped. Everything is ready to go. The only thing we have to do is look over the design. The design is there. It's finished. It's ready on my end. Modifications are absolutely acceptable, but I am coming into it fully prepared. That you're not waiting around and kind of waiting for me to get my. Can I curse on here, by the way?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
That you're not waiting around for me to get my shit together.
Yeah.
So.
I do like that. And I do know artists are kind of back and forth on whether to have all this stuff set up. I know personally I like it when it's like that. I mean, oh man, I remember years ago, me and a friend, she was just getting a little tattoo on her inner lip. And for some reason, it took this guy 2 hours to get it set up. It was like, what the fuck is happening? It was like neither of us ever went back or referred that guy again. It was like 2 hours sitting there for literally a 20-minute tattoo. It's like, um, but yeah, it's time. And I get that people don't want to spend time setting up if they're not getting paid for it, but then just add a little extra to what you charge per hour or something. And again, it's all about that experience to bring people back in. If someone's sitting around for an hour and a half, 2 hours, even 45 minutes while you get your stuff together, that's guaranteed they don't enjoy it.
I mean, the way I look at it is from a multi perspective, right? Like the client could be nervous. If the client's sitting there for like an hour and a half waiting for you to get your stuff done, I'm sure it's not making the transition into getting tattooed easier. And
Mhm.
you want to relax client when you're getting tattooed, you know?
Yeah.
Or even if they're not anxious, maybe they're getting frustrated, they're getting annoyed, they're waiting around, their patience is dwindling. That's not an energy that I want to carry out throughout the tattooing process. And setting up my station from start to finish, it takes me 15 minutes to set up my station. I
Mhm.
get in a half hour before my tattoo. I ease into the shop, open up, and I set up my station before my client gets there. And as far as drawing goes, like I want to have my drawing prepared. Maybe some people can draw on the spot. And I'm not talking about people who like freehand their designs, like absolutely that has to be done like on the spot. But
Yeah.
like my designs are prepared for when my client gets there. Me personally, I do my better work when I'm prepared, and maybe not everyone operates in that way, you know. Maybe some people can be better on the fly, but I think with my personality, it happens to be a little on the type A neurotic side. Like I need to come into it, knowing what is going on, being able to display it for my client and talk about it with them from like a finished perspective. So
Yeah. And again, personally, I like that. I know everybody has their own way of doing stuff, but yeah, I don't like sitting around for a long time while people are getting ready. Yeah, that's just me though. Um, So getting into the, I mean, again, nowadays it's like female tattoo artists are everywhere. But I know you had mentioned like you thought about it when you were younger, and 15, 20 years ago, it wasn't so much of a thing. What's your experience been like being a female in the tattoo industry or trying to get into it when you originally were thinking about it?
So when I was younger, I want to say like 18, 19 years old, and I was walking around with portfolio, like I got a lot of no's. I got a lot of get out of my shop kid, which I'm sure happens even today. Like there is, I think in a lot of apprenticeship um, communities, like, you get a lot of no's before, you soften them and you get in. Like there's like this, how much do you want it factor that is
Mhm.
involved, that I've heard and I've seen. Um, but there was one person who I asked, and they were like, "There's a gun behind the counter. If someone comes in, are you ready to like?" And I was
Oh
just like,
God.
"Yeah." I was like 18, 19 years old. I was like, I don't know how to. And so I think that's absolutely changed, and I'm not sure if that's female versus just others. Yeah, I don't want to comment on that particularly. I was a female. I do think that maybe if I was a 25-year-old guy, maybe the approach or the response from these artists would have been a little bit different. But today, I feel like I don't think that there's any like gender divide. I don't feel any of that, and maybe I'm just fortunate and blessed, and maybe there's even a little bit of privilege there. But like I am I've been welcomed with open arms in all the studios that I've now worked in since, and like all the guest spots that I've done, conventions. There's so much camaraderie. I've never felt like that being a female ever was a factor in that.
That's awesome. Yeah, and it seems like there's just as many, or at least close to female artists now, excuse me, as there are males. And it is cool when you go to a convention because you can tell it's a pretty even split. It's pretty
Yeah,
awesome to see.
it is
Yeah,
wonderful. Yeah,
the industry
absolutely.
has changed a lot, and definitely for the better.
Absolutely.
I know some older tattoo artists don't like the way it's gone, but not so much with the male female thing, but like the growth of the industry. And it used to be uh, a taboo subject in tattoos. It's weirder. At least I think it's weirder for somebody to not have a tattoo these days than to have one. You're like, you don't have one? What's wrong with you? Are you okay? Yes.
And you're right. I think there is this kind of divide between like, the old school tattooing culture and like what it's kind of growing and evolving into, more contemporary tattoo culture. And I feel like there's a lot of things I may have said or may say, in the next half hour or so that people on in the more traditional or older school community may not like, and that's okay. It's okay. We can disagree on things, but the reality is like the industry is changing and it is evolving. So
Yeah. I know when we get mean comments on like our Facebook ads and Instagram ads and stuff like that, it's always older males. 100%. I don't think I've ever had a mean comment from a female or really anybody that's younger. It's funny. You can actually go to their page, and usually the comment is, "Well, they should just do better work." And then you look at their page and it's like full day, like $600. Like, well, you're obviously not doing too well either there, buddy. But okay. And to get, you just need to talk shit, whatever. Um, but it has been really cool, especially, I mean, with the influx since COVID. There's, again, so many people coming into it, so many artists. And the industry, like anything else, is going to regulate. I know we're seeing it being slower now than it was pre-COVID or in 2022, but supply and demand will always go back to a baseline. It just takes a little while.
absolutely, I agree.
So when you were picking out what style of tattoos you wanted to do, what was your like biggest factor in that, and how did you pick it?
I don't know if it was like and my style is still evolving. I'll just say
Okay.
that. Like, I'll circle back to this. Like, I'm at a little precipice or turning point at the moment, but um, I remember being in the shop and like trying to like learn how to tattoo at first, right? And like without supervision, I wasn't told, hey, use a 7RL or a larger grouping to line and start. The ones that I liked using the finer line cartridges. I liked using the threes, the tight threes, to kind of do most of my work. And and I just kind of went with that. That was what I felt like I was comfortable with, that like had the aesthetic that I like, and it just kind of evolved from there. I did do a lot of black and gray, and I still do a lot of black and gray work. Um, and for a while, that was mostly just out of comfort because black and gray was an easier learning curve than doing color tattoos and really getting them to like the standard that I think color tattoos should be. I had trouble with saturation. I had trouble with my blends. Um, and that lasted for a long time. And I feel like I'm finally like breaking through that now, almost 3 years in, and I'm getting a lot more comfortable with color. So that fork in the road that I'm speaking of is like I I was just about to create a flash sheet for like some want to do designs with some more color in it because now I want to start opening myself to more color inquiries. Um, but it'll still be smaller, micro realistic kind of stuff. Yeah. So
Yeah, I mean, any artist I've talked to that's really good at the craft, even that's been doing this 20 years, is they still say they're evolving. Like nobody that's good stays still or doesn't want to get better. It's always evolving. It's always changing. Like from the ones that I've heard that I think are just like phenomenal artists, it seems like they started as more of a kind of like learned a style, then kind of moved into general multiple different things like color, black and gray, um, and then kind of out of that found where they wanted to go, and then moved into it. But then again, it's always, like I said, always evolving. So what they're doing now might not be what they're doing in 5 to 10 years, which I think is the best way to grow and become an amazing artist.
absolutely, I agree. And life in general, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're
Yeah.
not
Oh,
growing,
100%.
yeah. Right.
100%.
Mhm.
Even if you can just improve like 1% a week for a couple of years, that's a big improvement. Yeah, that goes with anything, not just being an amazing artist, but anything you want to do in life.
Absolutely. I
Yeah,
think that
I mean,
that 1% thing, it rings out there. But Atomic Habits, have you heard
yep,
or read that book?
that
Yeah.
is, yep, that is where it's from. Yeah. It's a good book, but I mean, it really shows you, you don't need to make, like, it's not an overnight process if you want it to be a long-term like growth and learning experience. Like just make a little bit of a difference every week, every day, just a tiny little thing, but it compounds over time and makes a huge difference in a long enough time horizon.
Absolutely.
No. So what's it like working in your area? Because you're obviously in a very populated area. There's a lot of tattoo shops. We work with a shop in Manhattan, and again, there's a tattoo shop on every corner. It's fairly competitive. So what's your experience been there?
So I feel like I'm really lucky in the neighborhood of Brooklyn that I'm in. It's a nice neighborhood, but I wouldn't consider it a trendy neighborhood,
Mm,
like maybe Williamsburg or Bushwick for people who are familiar with Brooklyn or New York. And I wouldn't consider it one of those like cultural hubs. Um, but it's a nice area, and it's far enough from Manhattan that a lot of cool people don't really want to go to this
okay.
area of Brooklyn because it's not as easy to get to where they gotta go.
Yeah.
Um, so you have a lot of people who've been here for a very long time, generations. You have, a lot of families. And it actually is like this little small town in the middle of like a city, and we all know
Yeah.
each other. And I think because of that, and don't know, there are a good number of tattoo shops. In Bay Ridge in itself, there's probably, Bay Ridge is the neighborhood. In Bay Ridge itself, there's probably 8 to 10 tattoo shops in this small little area. Um, but I think because there's such a strong community factor that, you know, the artists that put themselves and inject themselves into the community or have those contacts that have like they've known for years, that I served in the bar,
Mm.
8 years ago, because I also bartended in the neighborhood. I
Oh,
think just the ability to network here and the familiarity really, like, it's good. yeah, it's a good place
That's cool.
to tattoo. Yeah.
That's cool to hear. 'Cause I remember I went out to Manhattan 5 or 6 months ago, do a podcast out there, and like I've been to LA, I've been to Miami, I've been to Dallas, all these big cities. You get to New York, you're like, this is a different level of big city. It is gigantic. To go anywhere takes forever. It's yeah.
Terrible.
We were gonna go to Central
Terrible.
Park and we were 2.9 miles away. So I'll just call an Uber and it's like, yeah, it'll take 30 minutes to get there. I was like, what the fuck?
Absolutely. I'm plotting my great escape.
Yeah,
I can't do New York anymore.
yeah.
Um, and I always thought like I wasn't a city person living in New York. And I realized that's absolutely not the case. I love cities. I just don't like mega cities. You
Mm.
know, I don't like the New York, mega infrastructure. I don't like that. Small little cities I love. They're charming. They're great. But yeah, New York
Yeah,
is the beast.
it is giant. And I live in a town of about 50,000 people. We're out in the middle of Washington state. Like there's nothing really around us. So it's quite a bit different. I will say being able to go anywhere at any time of the day or night and get amazing food was awesome. Loved that
Yes,
part of it. That is super cool.
absolutely.
So where do you kind of see your I guess style and career going? Like what's the 5 year, 10 year plan?
So I have a move out of state uh, in sights for about like a year and a half from now. Um, Looking to move from New York to Florida.
Nice.
Um, when I'm there, I'm not really sure what it's going to look like immediately because I'll have to start cultivating like a new client base and everything like
Mm,
that. But I would say within 5 years, 5 to 6 years, I'd love to have my own studio. You know, um, I see it as rather than just like a tattoo shop. I like what we do in New York a lot, and I don't see this so much in a lot of other, kind of growing um, regions. Is um, in New York, you have these like spa-like tattoo experiences
mm.
that are a little bit more luxurious, a little bit more elevated, and there is catering to a certain demographic and a certain client, that wants that level of professionalism. And I think that having it also being like a community and art hub or an art hub for the community that also does like gallery nights and like invites other artists in and um, the details aren't all fully panned out in my head yet, but I have this kind of like vague little flashes of like what I want it to look like. Uh, yeah.
That's cool. And it's nice that you're actually planning out what you want. 'Cause seems like a lot of tattoo artists just like decide, okay, next week I'm going to start my own shop. I'm going to leave here, and there's not a lot of planning, and then you see them struggle a lot, especially moving to a new city. Where I mean, that's rough for a tattoo artist because your clients don't come with you. You're starting
Yeah.
from 100% scratch, which is I have massive respect for any tattoo artist that moves cities and stuff and just restarts. That's a stressful, astounding experience.
Absolutely. But it's
Yeah.
also a blessing as a tattoo artist that we have the mobility, like if we
Mhm.
want to go anywhere in the world. If you want to start somewhere, might be a little harder, but you can go anywhere in the world. You know.
Yeah. That is one of the perks of the career, or doing conventions, or just being able to travel and make money anywhere you want. That's freaking awesome. I love it.
Yeah, yeah. The
What
dream is
advice
to
would
like
you?
do like a, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say the dream is to like spend a year in a van and like just make money along the way and like do that for a year before like really like putting the stakes in the ground and settling down.
That
Who
would be
knows if that'll
amazing.
happen? But that would be really cool.
That would
Yeah.
be super cool. Yeah, you could definitely do that. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Just like guest spot to guest spot or something.
Yeah. I mean, I'm romanticizing it in my head now. I'm sure after a certain amount of time that'll get tiring.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah, but like in my head right now, it sounds great.
I've spoke with a handful of artists from like over in Europe and stuff, and some of them will come over here on like longer work visas and essentially just do that, like kind of hop from city to city, guest spot to guest spot for a couple of months. Like that sounds pretty cool. That
Yeah.
sounds pretty awesome. Yeah.
Absolutely.
What advice would you give to anybody who is thinking about getting into tattooing or people that are working on their apprenticeship right now? Because again, it depending on where they are, who their mentor is, there's very different varying levels of what people get out of a mentorship.
Absolutely. Um, I mean, I would love to say forego the apprenticeship, but I don't think we're there yet. There's not enough resources for people to just take those strides on their own. That I think, and not saying that there aren't people who don't who self teach and aren't great. There are great people who have self taught, but I think for most people, having guidance is really important. I would say, first and foremost, get to know the shop that you might potentially work with as an apprentice. Because it is a give and take. They are giving you, you know, their knowledge, and hopefully, they are giving you their knowledge. They're giving you their time, and they're giving you this wonderful gift. I think for anyone who's looking to start in this career, it's important to make sure that you pick a shop and a studio that aligns with your values and in the style that you'd like to learn to tattoo. And both are equally important because right now the industry, the styles are so diverse. You can go traditional, you can go color realism, you can go black and gray realism, you can go, you know, abstract minimalism. Like there are so many avenues. It really is an artistic expression at this point. It's so many different ways to go that I would say figure out the style that you like doing and then really get to know the shop that you're interviewing with. And don't get caught up with like rose colored glasses and just having that opportunity in front of you. Don't just run with that. Just look at them, ask them questions like what are their philosophies and do they align with your own? I think that's extremely important because the mentor and apprenticeship relationship is just that. It is a relationship. So like any other one, you don't want to be in a relationship with someone who's incompatible.
That is very true. And that's a solid point. Probably too many people just pick the first person that will say yes, even if it's not what they want to do or they don't get along or they're a dick. So yeah, I like that. That's all advice. Well, I've had you for about 45 minutes. I massively appreciate you coming on here. Where can people find you?
So the best way is through Instagram. My Instagram is Jovan, Jovan, Janelle, Janelle, period, tattoo. And that basically has my portfolio. It has my email listed, my DMs. I accept DMs and emails for inquiries. Even any questions anyone has, even if they're not looking for a tattoo, I welcome them to come ask questions. I'm an open book.
Awesome. Well, perfect. Thank you, Jovan. I massively appreciate it, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you. Have a great one.
Bye.